Alright guys, so there is a quiz today, but before I have y'all take the quiz, we'll be going over this here as well as any homework questions that you might have. Any questions over the homework from last week? So the first thing we went over last week was classifying triangles based off its angles and sides. Now there's four ways we can name it based off its angles: acute, right, obtuse, and equal angular. If it's acute, all angles are what? Less than 90. If it's right, we have one right angle. And if it's obtuse, we have one obtuse angle, or one angle greater than 90. And equal angular was what? 3 congruent angles. Likely with equal lateral and equal angle, it's kind of in the name. Scalene would be, well, no congruent sides. Isosceles is 2 congruent, and equilateral 3 congruent sides. And really for a triangle, that would be all of them. And we also said that if a triangle is equilateral, it is also what? Equal angular. Equilateral and equal angular go together, because if it's equal angular, then it's equilateral. If it's equilateral, then it is equal angular. We also went over interior angles of a triangle. Well, what's the sum of any 3 interior angles of a triangle? 180. So if we added all 3 of these together, they would equal 180. Now we also had the right triangle, the interior angles of a right triangle theorem. Well, if it is a right triangle, then the other 2 acute angles do what? Equal 90 degrees. But we could still add all 3 together and they would equal 180. Either way, it still gives us the same answer. Questions on this here? Because we also had the exterior angle theorem, which stated that the exterior angle is equal to what? The sum of the opposite 2 interior angles. So whatever the exterior angle is, it's going to equal the sum of the opposite 2 interior. So these 2 angles added together would give us the same as the exterior. Any questions on this so far? Now the corresponding parts of a triangle, we're just lining up what's congruent between the 2 triangles. And for this here, we're going to have 3 sets of angles and 3 sets of sides that are going to be matching up. Now we could start off with angle A is congruent to, well, since it has 3 markers, we're looking for the other one that has 3, which would be E. And we could say B is congruent to F. And lastly, C is congruent to D, because we just matched up the angle markers. So we're going to have 3 sets of angles on this here. We'll also have 3 sets of sides. So we can say AB is congruent to EF, because they both have 1. Well, BC is congruent to DF. And lastly, CA is congruent to DE, because they both have 3. So we're going to have 3 sets of angles, 3 sets of sides that will match up every single time. And for our congruency statement as a whole, well, I can say A, B, C, because we need to name one of the triangles in a way. It doesn't really matter which, we just need to put it down. So I can say triangle ABC. Well, what matches up with angle A? E, and then we went to B, which would be F, and then B. Now there's lots of different ways that we could do this congruency statement with the 2 triangles. And again, on the quiz, wherever you name it first, I'm just going to make sure it matches. Because we could have named it ABC, ACB, any three orders, and as long as the other one follows that same pattern, you're good. Any other questions on this here? Equilateral, equiangular, and isosceles triangles. Well, if a triangle is equilateral, it's also equiangular. And if it's equiangular, it's also equilateral. And we went over one other thing with equiangular. If a triangle is equiangular, what are the three angles? They're congruent, but they are. Because the only way that we can cut 180 degrees into three congruent parts, well, is if they're all 60 degrees. And lastly, with the isosceles triangle, well, the base angles are going to be congruent because the angles that are opposite congruent sides are congruent. The sides opposite congruent angles are congruent to each other. Any other questions on any of this here?